This is Algebra 1, Lesson 4I, about unit multipliers, and 4J, conversions of length. 4I, unit multipliers. Now, we've talked about this before, but just by way of reminder, if you have a fraction and you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, you get a fraction that looks different, but it's actually equivalent. We know that 1/2 would be half of the circle. And we know that 2/4 would be 2 pieces out of the 4 pieces, which is still half of the circle. So these are equivalent. Now, we can see here that what we multiplied by was 2 over 2. And 2 over 2 is equal to 1. So when you have a number and you multiply it by 1, the result is equal to what you started with. So that's why we're able to do that, right? So if I took the number 5, and I could write it as a fraction by putting it over 1, and I multiplied it by 7 over 7, 7 over 7 is equal to 1. So the result may not look the same as what we started with, but it is equal to it. It's kind of like a nickname. Have you ever had a nickname? You have your name on your birth certificate, and then you have a nickname that people call you, and the names are different, but you're the same person, right? So these fractions, this one's the same as this one. The values are the same. So what are some other ways that we can write 1? What about these? 3 over 3, that's equal to 1. 4 over 4, that's 1. Remember, you can think of that bar here as a divide, so 5 divided by 5. That's a 1. 10 divided by 10 is a 1. 53 over 53 is 1. What about this one? 3 feet over 1 yard. Hold on, that doesn't look the same, does it? 53 is equal to 53. 10 is equal to 10. 5 is equal to 5. Look at this. 3 feet is equal to 1 yard. And since the numerator and denominator are equivalent, they don't necessarily look the same, but they're equivalent, this is equal to 1. And if you flip it over, 1 yard over 3 feet, that's a 1. So there's lots of different ways we can write a value equivalent to 1. And we can use that in the next lesson about conversions of length. I think this is a super helpful way to convert. Now, I always have students say, well, that's not the way I do it. I know how to do it a different way. And that's fine. But the problems that you're going to be doing are going to start out pretty easy, and you could probably do it your way. They're going to get more and more complex. And if you'll learn this way, it'll help you when you get to the larger and more complicated problems. It'll also help you when you take chemistry. This is a great skill that will help you tremendously when you get to chemistry in high school. So let's look at example 4-5. Use 1 unit multiplier. Okay, so we just talked about unit multipliers right here. Okay, these other ways that we can write 1, this is a unit multiplier. It's equal to 1, so we can multiply by it. Just like here, 7 over 7, it's equal to 1, and we multiply by it. It's a unit multiplier. And the same as these. Now, these are what we're going to be using here. Something that looks like these two. Or that's how we're going to figure out example 4-5. So use 1 unit multiplier to convert 32 feet to inches. Now, you have to know something about feet and inches. Okay, so that's what you ask yourself first is, what do I know about these units, feet and inches? Well, I know that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So that means there's 2 different unit multipliers that I could use. I could write 1 foot is equal to 12 inches, or I could write 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. Okay, now let's go on and let's see which one would help us with this problem. Now, I kind of write out some notes. They didn't write it like this in the book, but I think it helps, and students have told me it helps in the past, so we'll try that. You always start with what they gave you. Okay, so what did they give me? Well, let's go back up here. They gave me 32 feet. You go in and find the number and the unit that they gave you, and that's what you're going to write first. Actually, let me write it above. 32 feet. All right, now I need to pick a unit multiplier, and it has to be one of these two that relates to the units that we're using in the problem. Both of these are equal to 1. 12 feet is equal to, 1 foot is equal to 12 inches, and 12 inches is equal to 1 foot, okay? But how do I know which one to use? Well, I'm going to write this 32 feet over 1 and make it a fraction. Okay, we can do that, put a whole number over a 1. I want to pick the unit multiplier that goes here so that the units will cancel out. Now, we know how to cancel. We have to cancel this way or this way, right? There's nothing to cancel there. But what about here, feet and inches? That's not going to cancel out, is it? I'm trying to cancel the units. So let's flip and use the second one. Let's try it like this. 12 inches over 1 foot. Now let's see if we have something to cancel. Aha! We can cancel out those units. So if we cancel out feet and feet, we can just multiply straight across, and that's where we get our answer. We're going to have 32 times 12. And I don't know, do they in the book? I don't even think they multiply it out. They don't. They write it out like this. They say that's the same as 32 times 12 inches. And we could multiply that out if we wanted to, but it does say here, we're not interested in a numerical answer, so we're not going to do the multiplication. They just want to spend the time making sure you know how to use the unit multipliers, but you know how to do that. So in your solution manual, it will probably list your answers on like that, not worked out all the way. All right, let's try another one. Done very similarly, okay? Use 1 unit multiplier to convert 36 feet to miles. All right, I know I'm going to start with the number they gave me, 36 feet, right here. I know I need a unit multiplier, so what are my choices? Well, they give me some things here. And sometimes I'm going to give you a chart in a little bit, and you are going to have to learn these. You probably already know them. Most of them. 5,280 feet equals 1 mile. Whoops, I think I started to write inch. 1 mile. Or you could say 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet. Now, either one of those will work for this conversion, okay? This information here. But only one of them is going to be able to do what they're asking me to do, starting with 36 feet. So I know I'm going to need to pick the one that has feet on the bottom, because I'm going to want feet to cancel, right? Because remember, you can think of this as over a 1, and I'm going to be multiplying by this unit multiplier. So let's pick the one that has feet. So I'm going to have 1 mile over 5,280 in the denominator. All right, then I can cancel. I could see this feet with this feet. And then there may be something else. Actually, you can cancel here some more, because both of these are even. So you could divide by 2 and maybe even divide by 2 again, and so forth. And I think they actually used a calculator on this one in the book. So I'm going to get 36 miles over 5,280, and the feet canceled. So I'm going to actually move the miles out to the side. It is this number of miles. Now, that's a really strange number. If you work this out, and again, I think they used a calculator on this, they're saying approximately 0.0068 miles. Why such a small number of miles? Well, if I got that answer, I would probably think, is that reasonable? So let's look back and see if that's reasonable. We're converting 36 feet to miles. It takes 5,280 feet to make 1 mile. I don't have enough to make 1 mile. I don't even have enough to make a half of a mile or a quarter of a mile. It is a very small part of a mile. So when you think about it that way, this does make sense. And that is your answer. Now, I did look ahead, and they're going to tell you certain times not to use a calculator because they're wanting to check your computation. So just go by the directions, okay? They'll tell you if they don't want you to use a calculator. And here, I believe they wanted you to. All right, so for 7, use 1 unit multiplier to convert 47.25 inches to centimeters. All right, they tell us that 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. This is two different measurement systems. We've got the standard system for inches and the metric system for centimeters. All right, so let's start with what they give us. We're going to write 47.25 inches. Let's multiply it by our unit multiplier. We could have 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters, or we could have 2.54 centimeters over 1 inch. Now let's see what we need. How do we know what to pick? We've got inches here on top, so we need inches here on bottom. So 1 inch on the bottom, 2.54 centimeters on top. And then we cancel. And then we multiply to find what the answer is. And I believe, again, they did not multiply it out. They just wrote it as 47.25 times 2.54, and then your answer is centimeters. Okay? So you can look to see in the answer key, but I think that's what they're going to have you do in your homework as well. All right, for 8, use 1 unit multiplier to convert 42 meters to centimeters. All right, so let's start with what they gave us. Let's multiply by a unit multiplier. We're either going to have 1 meter over 100 centimeters, or we're going to have 100 centimeters over 1 meter. And we get to choose based on what we need to cancel. So let's put this over 1. We're going to need a meter in the denominator, so it will cancel like this. So let's pick this one. Let's put 100 centimeters over 1 meter. And then we can just multiply straight across. 42 times 100. And they just, since that's an easy calculation, they went ahead and just did that. It's mental math. Multiplying by 100 moves the decimal 2 places. That's going to be 4,200 centimeters. And I know this isn't the way you're used to doing this type of problem, I'm sure, but it is so, so helpful. If you'll learn it on these simpler ones, it'll really help you when you get to the harder ones. Okay, example 4-9, use 2 unit multipliers. There we go. We're starting to get to the harder ones. We're going to go from 42 feet to centimeters. So we're going to start with 42 feet. We're going to have a unit multiplier here, and then we're going to have another unit multiplier here, and then we're going to have an answer. Now, why do we need 2 different unit multipliers? Well, the reason we need 2 different unit multipliers is because we've got 2 different systems here, and it's going to take 2 changes to get it into the other system. And here's why. We know, because we used it just a minute ago, they didn't tell us here, but we know from earlier that 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. Okay? So we're going to have to use that in a minute, but we don't even have inches. We've got feet. So before we can use this one, we're going to have to use something about feet and inches. And we know that 1 foot equals 12 inches. So that would be 1 foot over 12 inches, or that would be 12 inches over 1 foot. So what are we going to need to put here? Well, we need feet on the bottom. I'm going to put this over a 1. I know I'm going to have feet here, so that's going to mean I need this one. So 12 inches over 1 foot, and that will convert this into inches. Okay? So we're not going to multiply anything out right now. We're just going to keep going with our conversion. Once I multiplied this, I would get 42 times 12, and the answer would be in inches. So now I can use this information to get from inches to centimeters. So I'm either going to have 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters or 2.54 centimeters for 1 inch. I have inches here. I'm going to need to have inches down here so that they will cancel. Okay, and they cancel because an inch over an inch is another way of writing 1, right? And a foot over a foot is another way of writing 1. All right, so here I want inches on the bottom. So I'm going to write 2.54 centimeters over 1 inch. Just reviewing our units, this canceled with this canceled with this. So it did take us 2 unit multipliers to get 2 centimeters. So we're going to take what's left and multiply them together. 42 times 12 times 2.54. And the only unit that's left is centimeters. And that's how they left it in the book. Again, they're not asking you to work that all the way out. They're trying to make sure you know how to use the unit multipliers. All right, last one, example 410. Use 2 unit multipliers to convert 4 miles to inches. So I'm going to start with my 4 miles. I'm going to need to find a unit multiplier and then another unit multiplier, and that'll lead us to our answer. So what do we know here? Okay, 4 miles to inches. Well, we have a little chart, I believe. Miles to inches. Do you see anything here that tells us about miles? Here we go. We know that 1 mile is 5,280 feet. So we're going to need to be able to use that. 1 mile is 5,280 feet. Or I could use 5,280 feet is equal to 1 mile. Which one's going to be best? Well, for it to cancel, I'm going to have miles on the bottom here. So I'm going to need to have the 5,280 feet over 1 mile to be able to make those units cancel. Okay? Now, if I were to stop here, I would have some amount of feet because there are no more units. You would just have 4 times 5,280 and then feet. Okay, would be our answer. But they want us to go to inches. So I need to know something about feet and inches. And you probably know this one. You know, and it's in our chart down there too, that 1 foot is 12 inches or 12 inches is 1 foot. Which one do we need? Well, feet are here, so I'm going to need feet here. So let's put 1 foot on the bottom, and let's put 12 inches on top. All right, now we can cancel our units. We have a foot here and a foot here, and we can multiply straight across. We're going to have 4 times 5,280 times 12, and the only unit that we have left in the problem is inches. So our answer will be in inches.